Widdz here, and in today's video I have another amazing PvE build for you guys, and it's with one of the guns that I don't really use that often, but when I do come back to it, I'm just always so amazed with how good it is and question myself, why don't I use it more often? So in this video, I will go through the go-to build I use for this particular gun. But before I get into the video, I want to talk about today's video sponsor, PUBG Mobile. If you're into Transformers like me, you're gonna love this PUBG Mobile update. You can play a full-on Transformers mode where you can summon Optimus Prime or Megatron and battle it out in the special dual arenas on Erangel. Starting on July 18, you can unlock exclusive Transformer outfits, an upgradable hoverboard, and themed vehicles and items. You also get the big decision to either join Team Optimus Prime or Team Megatron. Then you can complete missions outside of matches to earn theme rewards. Personally, I'm all about Team Megatron. That triple fusion blast is just too good to pass up. So click the link in the description and download and play PUBG Mobile free today. So the gun that you saw in the intro is the Chameleon. So it is an assault rifle, but as you can see, it is actually a Vector. So the cool thing with this gun is that it does act like a SMG, but it is on the AR platform. So with that, we are gonna get health damage instead of critical hit chance, because yeah, it is a AR, but it is gonna feel more like a SMG. Because we have, for example, 20 optimal range, we have 1035 rate of fire with the current build. And in case you're wondering how to get the Chameleon, I would just recommend you guys to farm ARs in Countdown for target loot, and you should get it eventually. I think another great way to actually get this is through bounties, so you could check that out as well. When you eventually get the gun though, make sure you try to get damage to target out of cover as an attribute. And if we go down and look at the weapon mods, they are pretty good as well. 15 crit chance, 20 rounds, and then accuracy and stability. But the thing that makes this gun so insanely good is the talent itself. The gun itself focuses around hitting either headshots, body shots, and leg shots, as we can see right here. So hitting 30 headshots will grant you 20% critical hit chance and 50 critical hit damage. And this is for 45 seconds, which all of these buffs will be. But this alone is just crazy. So if you hit 65 body shots, you get 90% weapon damage, and 20 leg shots will give you 150 reload speed. And I mean, you just hear it yourself, like this will just make the gun a beast. The downside, of course, is that it's only up for 45 seconds. But the buff does refresh when you're out of combat. So as long as you can kill the NPCs in 45 seconds, you will keep the buff up. But not too long ago, they did add a pair of new exotic gloves called Exodus gloves. And they come with the smoke screen talent that on armor break, you would drop a smoke bomb, and this will conceal you from the enemies for 3 seconds, and this have a 40-second cooldown. What this doesn't tell you though, is that this takes you out of combat. So whenever this procs, then you will go out of combat, meaning that the Chameleon buff will refresh. And since the cooldown of this is 40 seconds, while the Chameleon is 45, that means we have a 5-second window where we can easily get it triggered. And on top of that, of course, if you can clear the room faster than 45 seconds, or in combination with one of those, you keep the buff up. So with the addition of Exodus gloves, it makes it extremely easier to keep the buff up 100% of the time. A lot of times when I have played this, I remember a few months ago, I literally kept the buff up non-stop for over 15 minutes, and then yeah, I decided to stop trying. But that is how insanely easy you can keep the buff up. So Chameleon with Exodus is kind of the backbone of this build. And in case you're wondering how to get the Exodus gloves, they were in the last season, meaning you should be able to farm them anywhere on the map. So my recommendation would be to go Countdown and farm for gloves, and you should eventually get them. However though, I have heard that they might not be in the loot pool, but they should, and I have seen people gotten them though. Try your luck and let me know in the comment section below. If we keep going with the build though, we are gonna be using the Striker gear set, which a lot of you guys are probably familiar with. But you can of course use other gear sets, but the Striker gear set in particular is extremely powerful because it does give you a lot of damage and weapon handling that gives you ability, accuracy, swap speed, and reload speed, and the 3-piece with rate of fire, which works extremely well because we have a fast firing gun with over 1000 rate of fire, and then 4-piece We build stacks on hit, and this works of course extremely well with the 1000 RPM, making us build it really fast. And we are gonna be using the backpack in this case. So when you fully stacked, instead of getting 65, you get 90% weapon damage. Something different compared to last time is the stats priority though. This time around, I'm running it with 5 blues and 1 red. And that is because of the season's global modifier. You get a lot of benefits for playing blues, such as hazard protection, giving you 7.5 for each stam tier. So when you maxed out, you will get 37.5% hazard protection. On top of that, you do get headshot damage for every 100,000 total armor. If you have 5 to 6 blues, this will give you 40 to 50 headshot damage for free. And then you also have extra padding that would give you 25% protection from elite with tier 5 in stam. In my opinion, you should choose between safety first or extra padding and swap one of those to load it up so you get more critical hit damage from your critical hit chance. If we talk more about the stats priority, we are of course gonna be going critical hit chance and critical hit damage. And you want to try to get a ratio 1 to 2. So let's say 50 crit chance, then you want to have around 100% critical hit damage. In this patch in particular, you can have higher critical hit chance just because we can reach 100 critical hit chance. With Chameleon in particular, we will be getting 20% extra from the gun, so don't forget about that. Which means we should be anywhere between 40 to 50. So 40 crit chance if you don't play with modifier, and 50% crit chance if you play with the modifiers. And that opens up quite a lot with the build because we don't have to spec as much when it comes to critical hit chance. So the way the build actually looks like is like this. In terms of primary weapon, you can use whatever you want, but honestly, I'm just 100% of the time almost using the Chameleon, and you don't want to swap around because then you lose the buff. The last piece that I choose to use is actually a Palisade for the 10% armor on kill. And then once again, crit chance, critical hit damage, and of course, obliterate on the chest talent. I guess a talent that is worth to talk about as well is Unbreakable. Since we already get so much damage out of Chameleon, it can be nice if you want to go for more survivability to have Unbreakable, especially if you play like me and you intentionally will get your armor to 0 to re-trigger the Chameleon buffs. Of course, that is a bit overkill, but it can be a nice addition, so just thought I would mention that. Since we are using Chameleon though, you could, if you want to, actually use the striker chest piece and then use something else. But since we're using the Exodus gloves, we are tied to that exotic. But other brands that you could be using instead of Palisade, if you want to focus all on damage, you could use a Fenris. I don't think there's any need for Seska because her crit chance should be high enough. But you could possibly use a Grupo. Or if you want to go more on survivability, maybe go Bellstone for that 1% armor region. I mean, one downside with this one when you are playing 5 blues, it is a little bit harder, of course, to trigger Exodus gloves. If you want to trigger, make sure that you get out of combat in some scenarios. But if you are playing 6 red, which you probably will do with this build or close to it in the next patch probably, then that armor on kill is actually hella nice because it will give you some survivability. Of course, you already have 10% from the gunner specialization. That gives you 10%, right? But having 20 is definitely a nice combination, especially if you play a bit more red. Other than that, we have the every fire reload is 50% faster, which in this case doesn't really matter because we will get so fast reload speed from the Chameleon alone. Make sure you pick up the AR damage in the tree. And we have stuff like barrage for increased rate of fire. In terms of skills, nothing really new here. I use a Revive Hive. And then I combine that with a Crusader Shield. But that should be it for this Chameleon build. A super fun gun to play. And it's always one of those guns that I usually never really main, but then I haven't played it for a bit. I pull it out and it's just super fun. So with that said, if you're interested in more Division 2 videos like this, then make sure you hit the subscribe button. I'm still live with a subathon at twitch.tv/widdz with Twitch drops. So in case you haven't gotten the drops, you could always come in and say hi and farm those. With that said, I will catch you guys in tomorrow's video or live on the stream.